Welcome to our last session. I can't believe it. Our last live session for Open Branding Month from Rebels and Rulers. Oh, hey, Adrian. Thanks for joining. We have one of your big fans, Michael, that's here. As many of you know, this month has been quite a roller coaster, a really great one, I have to say, very exhilarating. We've had content every day. We're going to make sure that everybody has access and information about the live sessions that we did and how you can see them after today. So definitely keep watching our social media channels and we'll give you all of the information. But for now, today, we're continuing our live session with two guys that you might already know if you've watched their masterclasses on the website. If not, Michael is here. He's the founder and creative director of Johnson Banks Design. He's a super well-known British designer, so we're very, very lucky to have him. And he's written a couple of books. If you haven't checked them out, definitely do so. And Sonal is one of our dear friends for a while now. He's the former CCO at Ogilvy Southeast Asia, and he's also a writer, a director, and now a creative consultant as well. So he's doing some incredible work. If you ever get a chance to, I don't know, buzz him about some of the film work and things that he's done, definitely do so, because he has some great stories to tell. So welcome, Michael, and welcome, Sonal. Thank you so much for being here, for making this last day a creative one.
It's a pleasure. Yeah.
Now, as always, guys, I have my questions prepared for the guys. There are obviously a lot of things that I want to ask them, but should you have any questions along the way, please don't wait until the end. Just shoot them over to me using the Q&A function on Zoom or the chat on Facebook, and then I'll be sure to introduce the questions as much as I can in between what I hope to be a lively debate between the guys, or conversation, debate, what have you. So without further ado, I think we can get started. So unlike, let's say, when we were talking for everyone here, when I was talking to Michael and Sonal about this session, I think what was interesting compared to some of the other discussions is that for us, how shall I say this, the pandemic and what happened this year didn't feel so much like an additional thought to add at the end or something like this of the conversation. While with some of the other sessions, you might have seen that, you know, we'll talk about a certain part of the branding industry, and then at the end we might have, or somewhere in the middle, we might have mentioned what it meant in the context of this year. But I think for these guys, because of what they've seen and because of what they've been watching and what they've been working on, I think it's maybe important for us to start with a little bit of a foundation on how they think about what happened this year in the context of our industry, just because it relates very much to what I want to continue with afterwards. So if you'll allow me, I'd love to ask, and maybe Michael, you can start, but I'd love to ask, how have you seen advertising, marketing, design, communications as a whole, or even parts of those specifically, respond to a pandemic like the one that we've witnessed this year?
Well, that's a big question. I think one of the things that I've noticed from our side is that a lot of companies have struggled. Yes, a lot of companies that were really established just to make a profit and just to be I'm speaking from a London/England/Europe perspective. The companies that was just established to kind of make money and keep enhancing growth and getting us to buy more of this and buy more of that have been in a lot of trouble. Advertising has stopped, marketing has really declined. And what we found happening a lot, and after we got through the initial panic that I think everyone felt, we started to realize that because we had been looking for purpose-driven and ethical clients for some time now, that those inquiries didn't stop. In fact, I think they've increased. And I think what's happened is that they talk about this year as a year that's accelerated change. It's sort of taken 5 years of change and jammed it all into 7 or 8 months. And it does feel a bit like that to me, that all of a sudden we've got a lot of people coming out of the woodwork saying we want to do a purpose-driven project. We are a purpose-driven startup. We want to do something that's ethically strong. We don't want to do things which are bad. And this is just kind of accelerated this year rather than slowed down. So it's interesting that within what you would think would be a crisis, it's a bit like everyone's eyes have opened a little to the problems of the world. And now, not just me and not just my designers, but my clients too, want to do things that make a difference. They don't want to just contribute to the bad things that were happening before. Now, that's my perspective, but that's what I can see from my side of the fence.
So now you're in India, so I think this is interesting to see maybe what your perspective is as well on the subject. You're on mute, by the way.
Always. You know, I mean, as we all know, and it has been discussed and written about so many times now, because it's already been, almost a year. But what it did was initially is to took everybody by such a big surprise. Behaviors changed, and suddenly some of the industries had to really scale back stuff. For example, whether it was the hospitality industries, some industries got hit really badly. Some industries like FMCG and some of the manufacturing stuff, which came under, so to say, essential services, still continued with work, still continued with advertising. A lot of focus went into, a lot of thought of people went into these, front warriors, as they were called, whether doctors and nurses and your guards and your people who were getting, transporting stuff from the essential goods from the factories to the shops, So a lot of empathy, compassion came, besides when suddenly the whole humanity, the whole people in India found, and I'm sure it kind of replicated itself everywhere. But what it did was, that was the initial shock and initial feelings that happened. What it also did was that many of the companies pulled back on advertising. That immediately affected the advertising industry. So some bigger agencies could still tide over it, but there were smaller agencies, smaller houses who possibly were dependent on one or two big brands. And when they suddenly stop advertising, many of them scaled back. So a lot of jobs got lost, especially the younger folks. A lot of many people took cut in their salaries. So the whole now, in such a kind of scenario, advertising also took a big change in India. Michael talked about purpose-driven advertising. It has gone one step further here. It is more of compassion now. Whether it's big advertisers, I'm looking at even small advertisers. For example, there's a project that I did recently for an Elco beverage brand. And their positioning has always been about friendship. It's a very big brand. But their whole thought this year that we worked on was to thank your friends for being such good friends over all these years, to show the gratitude. So imagine that kind of advertising happening for an Elco beverage brand, that you thank your friends. So it's not about having fun with friends, but you are picking up the phone and telling your friends that you are a champion, for being with me for such a long time, or for listening to me or giving me the shoulder. So that on one. Even smaller clients, for example, now that I'm independent, I've got this mix of big and small clients. Smaller clients also coming in and saying that we don't want any hard sell. Could you do? There was a client that I was working for, which said that could the commercial be all about? Could the advertising be all about thanking the frontline workers, the doctors and nurses? So this change that has happened, which is compassion, empathy, all these are the words that, or these are the feelings that one is seeing in advertising more and more now. And I've got a feeling that post-pandemic also, some of it but it'll be part of. Now I don't think we can go back to that very hard sell, just doing business, making money kind of advertising.
I hope not. I don't know, Michael, would you agree? Post-pandemic?
Well, I think No disrespect, Sonal, but I think the advertising industry is by definition very, very good at picking up on themes and currents and how people are feeling in the now, the zeitgeist, if you like. And that is what good advertising does very well. Now, when I don't know, towards the end of next year, like in a year's time, maybe everything will return to hedonistic, get out there, get on a plane, spend the money, drink the beer. I hope not. But if I'm completely honest, I don't work in that sector because I don't want to work with those people, because there's a danger that what you're reflecting really and what you just said is true, of course, because the advertisers are thinking, oh, we can't go out there with spend the money, get drunk, have a good time, because that doesn't feel appropriate. So we'll pick a more quotes appropriate message. I'm much more interested in the clients who were good in the first place. You know, the non-alcoholic beer and the meat that doesn't have any meat in it, or if we're talking about FMCGs, if you like. And that's what I'm really intrigued about, i.e. clients who genuinely have a purpose, not clients who are a bit scared by the pandemic and are now looking for a new angle. to be blunt.
No, I mean, yeah, that was not the case with this brand that I'm speaking about. And to add to it, it's not just the pandemic. This purpose-driven work has started to, I mean, it has started to happen for the last 2-3 years now. There are big brands, like if you look at whether it's Hindustan Lever, which is Unilever, or some of the other big brand, I would even say Diageo. Many of these people, many of these brands are actually going beyond just CSR, but brands standing for something, like Hindustan Lever doing a huge amount of work in terms of sanitation, in terms of child hygiene, and or water conservation, and work that has made an impact. And it's a continuing piece of work. It's not that it's kind of responding to a specific situation.
So what about the creatives themselves? I mean, Michael, have you seen a trend with them as well when you go out to hire, you know, designers or something like this? Have you seen any changes in what they ask of you and what they want to do and what drives them? And is this parallel with what you're seeing there?
Maybe, yeah. I think, I mean, for years, I think that really, as a company, well, for at least the first third of my time as running a company, really we were just here to try and do good work. And designers would come to us to do good work, and together we would try and do good work. It's very simple. The trouble is that one's definition of good work gets a bit blurry, because if you don't think about what the client is doing or what the client wants. And what's really, really changed over the last, I would say 6 or 7 years really, is that we have been much more upfront about the fact that we want to do good work for good people. And I've noticed that the designers coming to me are now quizzing me about what is my purpose, how ethically driven are we, and what does that really mean, and what are we really doing about it? This is quite interesting, actually. The sort of I'm being interviewed as much as I am interviewing them about, and they want to know when if I say that I want to be purpose driven and ethically led, they're saying, okay, they're kind of testing me on that, and they're asking me. I think it's a really interesting change, certainly in comparison to, say, 20 years ago, when all that people wanted to do was do good work and win an award, you know. And that now, certainly to me, feels very, very transient and very thin. You know, it feels like maybe it's because I'm older and now I want to make a difference, maybe. But I don't want to do that anymore. I mean, if something wins an award, okay, great. But we start off trying to do good things for good people. And if people like it, well, that's an added extra. But we would never, ever, ever sit down and say, hey, guys, this could win an award. You know, that's absolutely, that's a kind of end benefit if we're lucky, you know.
And on the big stage now, that's happening less and less, especially in the big shows, which is any entries coming in which are made just for awards are being easily spotted. So they don't in any case don't stand a chance.
Right.
But
yeah.
But I get your point. To me, I mean, just to add to your point, when we go back to normal, hotels will open up. They will have to advertise about parties and all that. So we can't we are human beings, right? So we'd like to party also. We'd like to go to the movies also. We'd like to say cheers to our friends, whether you call it beer or drinks. So all that will happen, but there will definitely be a change in terms of in terms of some amount of empathy coming into many of even such kinds of brands. That's what I see happening.
So there is a potential for change. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. You guys seem to have a little bit of differing opinions on this, but to what extent can we say that, you know, there are brands that this year have completely changed, and that maybe before we would have looked at them and said, oh, these are the kinds of people that only do campaigns for awards. These are the kinds of people that are part of the problem, as Michael might say. But they've managed to, you know, turn around given what has happened. Have you seen a lot of that, or do we even believe that that's entirely possible? At a large scale?
I've been observing a huge scramble for brands trying to appear to be authentic and purpose-driven for some time. And they've been scrambling even more this year to not say the wrong thing, to put out empathetic messages, as you say, to have some humility. Now, it's a bit like when your politicians tell you that you must believe you and we're all right, really, you know, and we're all kind of fine-tuned now, I think, to sort of listen to our politicians and go, really? You know, so, you know, D&AD this year, I mean, there were still 1,000,001 ads for burgers, and a burger this and a burger that and burger the other. Now, I couldn't give two shits about burgers, and I definitely don't want to work for a burger company, you know? This comes down to fundamental decisions. Your point is absolutely fair, Sonal, that everyone will want to go back out and have a party and buy a burger and this, that, and the other. It's just from my perspective, I don't want to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
And when people kind of grab onto this post-pandemic authenticity, we're here for you bandwagon, shall we say? My bullshit radar it starts to go like this, yeah. You know, it's like thinking, well, that's just bullshit. You know, they're just piling in here. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see. Next year, it's going to be very interesting to see how brands cope with post-pandemic and how they pivot. And whether they go, okay, well, that's all over now. Let's go back. Let's go back to where we were. You know?
The thing is that human beings also, the consumers now are very, very savvy now to kind of, their radars are also up when a company starts to bullshit.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, for example, in India, the things have already started to pick up, you know, because the effects, in certain parts, the thing is kind of tapering off, and people have kind of become used to this new normal also. That is another thing. So at many places, lockdown has been eased. Many of the industries have started. So things are already going back to normal. And the heartening thing is that the jobs are being created once again. People are being taken in, so that's happening on one hand. And you can already see that advertising has got going back to what it was, but yet with a difference. So as far as you know, this bullshit radar that you're talking about, that even consumers are now really savvy to kind of see that, and will be, I think, savvier post-pandemic. You know,
So then what do we recommend for brands that really want to change, or for leaders that really want to change the organizations that they have, and they want the work that they do to no longer be considered part of the bullshit? What do you guys recommend? Where do you start? Where does it start inside the organization? What does it actually involve? I mean, we have to be able, yes, we can criticize, but we have to be able to be constructive as well when it comes to what we know and what we expect and what we think they should be doing. Because otherwise I think it's sad if we say that, you know, a burger or a beer company can't possibly be a purpose-driven brand, an ethical brand. Michael, I'm looking at you like, I don't know.
They'll be as much as they have to be. Do you know what I mean? Or as much as they, because see, the fact is, there'll be different kinds of products that there are different kinds of products that people consume at different times of the day for different parts of their lives, you know. So from certain brands, the consumers demand, I think, a lot more than from certain other brands, you know. So but as far as authentic conversations, genuine conversation, and no bullshit is concerned, that is, I think, demanded from any kind of brand. Now more so because again, there is through social media, there is an immediacy to, if I don't like something, I can actually start immediately talk about it. And the whole, you know, Twitter trolls, Facebook armies, you know, they can bring down brands, you know. That there are too many false steps taken.
Yeah,
I think to your question, Flavia, I think it's a difficult question. I think for, you know, I think if okay, we don't do a lot of FMCG B2C stuff, and we're starting to, interestingly, but all the people that are approaching us because of our stance. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are being approached by people who are already good. Yeah. So we are in this kind of little bubble of goodness, really. So
which is a good place to be.
Which is a lovely place to be. Yes, it's self-perpetuating, I've found. But maybe we'll come back to that. But the question about how do people who, which is kind of implied in your question, is how do people who aren't good appear to be? Okay, how do they get some of this goodness? Now, if you need a brand consultant or an advertising specialist to come in and tell you how to be authentic and how to be good, then there's a problem, really, because what you're really doing is you're applying a veneer of authenticity or niceness or purpose-driven or what have you. Because if you dig through the veneer and you basically at the bottom it's just people bunging out burgers or whatever. You know, I'll give you an example. There was a huge amount of noise at Burger King made last year about how they were melting down their plastic toys. I mean, big deal. You know, but they turn this into this huge project and massive promotions and animations and films and this, that. At the end of the day, you know, it's people handing their toys back. You know, it's like, well, I really, you know, it really gets to me, that kind of thing. But we have stopped really quite a while ago. Anything that has even the whiff of CSR about it, we just don't go there, because if we can't tell within what was a meeting and now a couple of Zoom calls that actually in their heart people want to do the right thing, then we won't do it, basically. So we are making a choice, much as my designers who want to work for me are making a choice about my stance. We are now making a choice about the people who come and want to work with us. So we're kind of assessing them as much as they are assessing us. So and maybe there's going to be more of that. I hope so, because if this cohort of quotes millennial cohort are coming through and want to live their life in a better way with more purpose and more ethically driven, which I think is true, certainly here, then that is going to have an effect. That's got a knock-on effect into employers, into what they buy, into what people try to sell them. So I see this very positively, actually. I just would hate it to be turned into you remember that the 2021, that was a year of authentic, purpose-driven brands, and then 3 years later it all changes again. You know what I mean? I hope, to Sonal's point, that maybe post-pandemic we will see a kind of fairer, more honest, nicer world.
Yeah, I really believe in that, because I can already see that. I mean, you can always single out one company or the other, but overall, in the last 5-6 years, or maybe slightly longer, work or communication, or even the stuff that people are, the way the companies are approaching their business, that has become definitely purpose-driven in many cases. So it was already happening, and this post-pandemic, as you were saying, with many other things, like with technology, 5 years thing has been compressed into 1 year. Even in terms of behavior, I think the change has been something which was already happening is now accelerated. And the other thing is that again, to add to your point, which is millennials or the newer consumer is demanding people to be authentic, and therefore, even if you are not authentic, you can't survive if you don't have that gene in you, you know. So I think that's why it'll happen. Consumers are demanding it, and as I said, because consumers also have the wherewithals now to immediately react, talk, talk as a force, you know. So
it's interesting because when we talk about this, you know, we and to Michael's point, we talk about it as if people have been forced to do this. You know, like this year has forced brands to be this way. And if we sit there and compare brands to people, then we know that forcing someone to do something is not the most sustainable way of changing somebody's behavior.
I would argue that, because if you look at it, however, I'm a brand manager. I'm also a human being, you know, so that's what's happened. Advertisers, marketeers, brand owners because everybody has suffered this year. It's not one section of people. Everybody, whether it's the president to the you know, to the lowermost person, everybody has suffered together, and that's what's absolutely unprecedented. Now, in that scenario, a marketeer, a brand manager is not just reacting as a brand manager that, okay, let me try to be authentic. He's genuinely doing it because he's also suffered, you know, he's also working from home. So
yeah, good point.
But that's why there's a lot of genuineness now than possibly it was before pandemic. And I think this kind of shakeup that has happened to human beings, right? That's why this effect will last possibly much longer than it would have if it was engineered, you know.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Michael, how does this relate to what you were talking about with the self-perpetuating cycle that you've created between you and brands and the people that you work with and things like this? How do you feel like, it sounds like it's a little bit about your impact as well and how you want to move things along?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, okay, so I think the last time we did a fundamental rejig of our company website, so it's about 4 or 5 years ago, we had a lot of discussion about the fact that even at that time, I think 80% of our work was educational, cultural, not-for-profit charity, i.e. we were already, and have been really since the early noughts, almost 2 decades, our clients have been intentionally skewed away from blue chips, who we didn't want to work with anymore because they were so annoying. And would eat too much coffee in meetings and then say ridiculous things. And one guy came in and drank an entire cafetiere of coffee, all the biscuits, and then slagged everything off. And I thought, I think at that point, I thought, I don't want to work with these people anymore. They were mainly male. There was too much testosterone. And I'd had it with them, you know? And what we discovered.
You've had some really bad experiences.
Really bad experiences. I thought, fuck this.
Michael is very determined, guys.
You should come to India.
No. I've tried many times to do projects. It never works. Anyway, and I'd noticed that our clients were shifting towards this way. Anyway, so we were on this road. Okay, and about 4, 5, 6 years ago, we started to just talk about it more and more and talk about what we were doing. And then we elevated this idea to right up to the top of our website. You know, defining and designing brands that make a difference. And we stopped sort of it being implicit, we made it explicit. And I think that what I'm now finding is it is now self-perpetuating, because if you think about it, you know, so we were approached by this company that was making a kind of meat substitute, not meat. And we were approached by these people because we hadn't done any normal packaging for normal FMCG people, but they liked the way we were thinking. We liked our purpose and why we felt what we were put on this earth to do, you know. And so that's then we started working with them. It's become a very big brand over here. Within just over a year, it's called This. It's called This Isn't Meat, and it's been a huge product. And now it's in all the supermarkets, and I should have taken shares because they're going to be huge, these guys. You know, they raised £5 million just like it in half an hour the other day for them. Anyway, and then that project then has attracted other projects and other projects, and And our charity clients had already attracted other charity clients, and our university and education clients. Do you see what I mean? So all of this, to your point, this creates this little world where you are being referred. And the most powerful, the most powerful new business term tool in my business is referral.
Yes.
And I think it's still the most powerful new business tool. You do good work for a good person in a good sector, then they will refer you, or they will be asked by someone, who did this for you? And that's what we're now finding. Now, I'm old and a little bit gray. And so, you know, I have had to wait a while for this to happen. I'm hopeful, of course, that the younger generation of designers don't have to wait till they're in their 50s to be able to just say, look, this is what we do. This is who we work for. We want to do good work for good people. It is amazing, though, how many people don't say this. How many people go, oh, we're doing this charity project, and then they're actually doing a car brand at the same time. Or they'll write a blog post about Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, they're doing a bank. You know, there's a kind of weird little game that's going on now.
But that becomes too extreme, Michael. I mean, car brands do also need advertising, and people also do need cars to take them from one place to the other.
Electric cars, yeah.
And if there's a company that's manufacturing cars, and it's also taking care of the fact that also doing something, or genuinely doing something in, let's say, sustainability, or trying to reduce the carbon footprint. The fact is, cars are needed. You can't throw away cars tomorrow. You know?
Yeah, but I suppose what I'm talking about, and maybe I'm talking about from a privileged position, I don't know, but I'm talking about choice here. You know, if we were approached by a car manufacturer who was still making diesels or still making, you know, making hybrids that weren't hybrids really, you know, basically lying about the technology, we just wouldn't do it, you know. They came to us with an electric car, we'd be on it like a shot. You know, my point is that there's a lot of people out there who are kind of treating charity, education, and not-for-profit as sort of like pro bono. The Americans call it pro bono. I will do this. It'll make us feel better, and then we'll get back to those people over there who pay us all the cash. And I'm querying that business model, basically.
Yeah, that never works. I mean, that used to work at one point in time, but I don't think it works, because even again, many of the big companies are earlier it used to be just 1% of your revenue that's going into CSR. Now it's become much more than that.
Yeah.
That it's the whole philosophy, brand philosophy, the products that they're dealing with. Many of the products are standing for something and working towards. So it's not that on one hand you are doing whatever you want to do, and on the other just a little bit of money is going to CSR. All that has changed, I think.
It's like
it has changed in a big way in India.
It's like we're sitting here and trying to develop like some kind of method of analyzing the level of transformation that brands have gone through. Yeah, that's literally what this process feels like. You know, it feels like the three of us are somehow on in similar but different camps a little bit, and we're trying to see if there's a way for us to analyze how transformed a company can or cannot be, which I think and to what Michael was saying, I think the important thing about what Michael is saying is that it's possible. So for me, it's important for everybody listening to know that it's possible. It's possible for you to have, you know, a business in this industry where you can choose the clients that you want, and they can be the really good ones. And it doesn't mean that you will be suffering of hunger or like the more traditional thought process of, oh, you know, we need to grow to the extent where we get the biggest brands, this car, that car. Oh, once you get an airline, you know, kind of like the Mad Men mentality that has stuck around for so long. But it's possible. And to Michael's point, you know, I can agree that I hope the you know, the rest of us, let's say the millennial generation, doesn't necessarily have to wait that long to do this, because of what folks like Michael and Sonal have been able to do for us in this industry. So this is why I wanted to bring this up, because I think it's important for people to hear it. And to be honest, it affected me when you told me as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that people kind of got a chance to hear that side of things. Now, Sonal's side is very different, just because it's so creative what you do, Sonal. So I feel like there's so much power in the storytelling that you do, and you go in there and you get very involved in there's a magic and a power there that I think is a little bit different than maybe what Michael was saying. Not to say that, Michael, your stuff is not creative. I'm just saying that for Sonal, I think there's something there about when it comes to being a writer or working in film, or that just kind of pulls you into to these stories. And I'm wondering, Sonal, if you can tell us maybe a little bit about some of the actual creative trends that you've seen, and especially in India, because it's always been such an inspiration, I think, for the rest of the world. And as you showed at Rebels and Rulers as well, so much that we can learn from there, to be honest, when it comes to this. Are there any things that you're actively watching or actively excited about when it comes to the creative?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that has happened is with the storytelling was always at the fore in Indian advertising. So hard sell very rarely worked in India, because us Indians we grow up listening to stories, whether they are millions of deities and gods and Mahabharata and Ramayana, there are stories abound, and whether it's a street theater, folk theater, there's so much of drama which is part of our Indian lives that people want to very naturally see that happening in ads also. So ads that make you laugh, ads that make you cry, ads that tell you a story are the ones, that's the kind of advertising that has been happening for such a long time. Because we Indians naturally are storytellers. What has happened is that now with the OTT platforms coming in, Netflix in a big way, a whole lot of very different kind of stories are being told on Netflix, like the chess series that
Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit that Michael talked about. So within India, Bollywood served a certain kind of storytelling, Bollywood, with glitz, glamour, song and dance. But what OTT has done in India is to bring in all different kinds of stories. So Indian directors, producers, writers are experimenting with some really, really interesting stories, which are also doing well. Now that is affecting films also in a certain way. Feature films, because feature films are running on OTT as well as on cinema. So these big budget films, I think, will give way to some really, really interesting stories, even in these big theater, big cinema, whenever we go back to the cinemas. Now that is, so a lot of advertising people have gone into OTT writing. There's a lot of crossover that's happening. And that's now bringing up the quality of storytelling of both sides, advertising as well as OTT. But storytelling was always to the fore. Storytelling continues to be at the forefront in India, and fueled more by now this OTT and the variety of stories that are being told now. So cool. That's one of the trends that I've seen, besides the trend of the kind of advertising that we are seeing in the pandemic. But besides that, overall, there's a lot of crossover that's happening in terms of talent from both sides, and that's kind of making both rise that much better.
Michael, what about in your world, in the design world? What are some of the actual like creative trends that you're seeing, or that have, I don't know, either from the people that work from you or the people that you work with, or what are you actively following? Maybe something you're actively propagating as well when it comes to design trends.
Well, that's a good question. I think that I don't know if it might have been driven by necessity, but we've noticed that this year in the general branding world here and across in the States, I think that we generally look at we take a kind of mid-Atlantic view of what's happening in brand and identity. It kind of flip-flops between here and the States, and we're somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic at the moment. No disrespect to India, but I think one of the really interesting trends this year, whether you like it or not, is that because people haven't been able to get out and take lots of photographs and do photo shoots like they were, there's been a huge amount of illustration and animation in the branding world. Like again and again and again, new brands or startups have sort of been forced to use illustrated imagery, found imagery, moving image. So there's been this really odd sort of trend, like we were talking about it earlier in the year. Every illustrator we know and every animator we know is really busy because if you think about it, you can't go and take a picture. You can't go to an office because everyone's office is like this office here. There's no one in it, you know. So that's one of the trends. I mean, I can't say if I think it's particularly. Well, it'll definitely be something we'll look back on and go, oh, do you remember that was the year that everyone used illustration? Because if you go onto any of the you know, the big blogs or the big brand sites, all you see is illustrated schemes, little cartoons and stuff. That's definitely been one of the things that I've noticed. One of the things that continues is the tendency, certainly here in England, for everyone to use the same sans serif upper and lowercase type for everything. And I'm heartily sick of that. Has been for some time. You know, every single brand, if you think about it, yeah. So Pinterest, Google, Microsoft, Spotify, I could go on and on and on, actually. They've all adopted virtually the same type of type. Yeah, upper and lowercase, middleweight, sans serif typography. So everyone's kind of got the same look at the moment. It's clean and it's, quotes, modern. Upper and lowercase, sans serif type, and maybe a little one or two color symbol. Usually, often one color, like punched out of bright colors, lots of what we call RGB colors and stuff. And that's really been the thing for, God, it feels like 2 or 3 years now. I'm heartily sick of it, you know.
You should change it now.
Oh well, we're trying really hard.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's interesting. But there are always trends. Yeah,
but some I love, like Apple, the work that Apple does with that type and with their type.
Yeah. I mean, when I started work in corporate identity, as it was then called, no one called it branding then. It was back in the 1930s in my case. But when I started in corporate identity, I worked at a company. I'm not going to mention them because they'll be annoyed with me. And every single project they did, the color scheme was gray and yellow. And when I arrived there, they were doing 2 schemes in gray and yellow. And as I was there, I only worked there for less than a couple of years, they did a couple more schemes in gray and yellow. And I thought, what the fuck is going on here? You know, everything was in gray and yellow. But that's my point, really, that the graphic designers are
for different brands, but everything was
brands. Yeah, but it's the same as what I mean now. Everyone's got a bright color and upper and lowercase type, sans serif. And branding follows these weird trends, you know, and they're a bit like sheep brand designers, a lot of them, as they go, oh, I want to do some of that, you know, I want to follow that trend, and off they go and they do it, you know.
And now with the internet making it so easy for you to get influenced, you don't even realize, these youngsters, especially the younger generation. But I think people at the top need to filter that, because so that
ideally, yes, you would filter it, but then if you're not spending your whole day on,
I think you're being extra harsh. I don't see that happening so much here.
This is the British humor. Dark humor.
No, I'm really big. There's a whole list of things that are banned in this studio. Yeah,
but you're right about the trends. You know, the trends do run in terms of certain kinds of illustration, certain kind of graphics, and especially in design. I see a lot of trends being copied from one to the other. Not so much in advertising, because I think different brands and different brands' voices start to come in. So possibly there's a little bit more of a discipline there.
But is it the creatives or the clients? Is it the creatives or the clients? Because you can be a creative, you can be a designer that wants to do things differently, but
I think both sides.
Infinitely difficult to convince a client to do something different when they're sitting there and they're going, I see that company over there did it really well, you know, and I'd like what they have.
That is an interesting point.
I think in advertising, an agency handling, let's say, 5 different brands, chances are that many of the times the voices are different, so there'll be a lot of checks. So most of the time you don't see this overlap happening.
It's a fair point, Flavio.
all the trends, if you start to look at, if you start to see things in front of you, you could capture certain trends. But the kind of trends that I've seen in design, even in India, trends being followed is much more than it happens in advertising, I think. So that's
I
one.
think, yeah, I think that there's definitely, every now and again, Flavia, to your question, we will have a client who says, no, we want to make it. Why have you made this look? I had a client years ago. Actually, I think it was the same coffee and biscuit client, actually, who demanded to know, when presented with all this work, why he hadn't got a piece of type next to a symbol. And I said, well, because everyone in your business has got a piece of type next to a symbol. And he said, that's what I want. And I said, but then you'll look like everyone else. He went, exactly. And I thought, oh, yeah, exactly, Jesus, and kind of left the room. There's a question in the chat, which I thought was interesting, Flavia. Do you want me to address it?
Go ahead. Whichever. There are two actually.
I
was
just
waiting to
add a bit to the some of the trends that you spoke about.
Oh, right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, thankfully in India the shoot started, but you are right. When the lockdown had just happened, because one couldn't shoot, we were seeing a lot of animation and animation, photo-driven work happening. Animation more, but now that the shoots have opened up in India, albeit again with a lot of precautions, but now it's back to the original kind of live storytelling. But the other thing that had happened is that I think a lot of agility has come in, and pandemic has told you that you need to be fast, you need to be agile, you need to be resourceful. And I think this part will continue again in terms of the way agencies work, which is you have to be on the ball, you have to be fast, and even in that speed, continue to keep the craft. That's the tricky part. But I think that's something that we've all learned now during this pandemic. And I think this is something that will continue, that the fact that you can on the Zoom, you can see a shoot that's happening and direct a shoot that's happening miles away from you. Some of those things will continue, I think.
Yeah, and I think that the opportunities that come with that for people to do really great work with other people doing really great work at a distance, I think that part being proven at scale, I think is one of the greatest opportunities, just because, we've always been big proponents of this with Branding Mag and everything that we do, that there's so much great talent all over the world that is so hands-on, and and some of them have just amazing things to say and such practical knowledge and insights to give. And so when at Branding Mag, we're picking our contributors and things like this, we're getting applications from all over the world, and we never consider the title. Like if there's somebody that wants to come in and says, oh, the CEO of, you could be the president for all I care. And to Michael's point, I really won't care if the content is not exclusive, it's not good, it's sponsored content we never do, things like that. And you see, because of that, you see that the people that kind of come to you are just this really great talent from everywhere. And we're not just on the writing side, as Branding Mag, but also on Branding News with the actual creative work for visual identities and interactions and things like this. It's amazing. And the fact that now this whole year has given those creatives a chance to work with, agencies in other places that maybe they wouldn't have been able to unless they agreed to move, or somehow they met them at some event, or there had to be this entire, dance and show before you could actually make it somewhere like that. But we were talking to Richard Swain I think it was Richard from Huge, that was saying, if you ask me now if I would have a creative director that lives in a completely different place from the rest of the team, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Absolutely.
And this is huge for people, for the whole population. It's huge.
And that's a great thing that has happened, this collaboration part, the fact that everything need not be under one big agency, and you could have small specialist agencies collaborating together and giving their best, because that is showing that is fast, that's agile. And when these very different people collaborate, great ideas come out also.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's almost this like natural barrier to any kind of conformity. It's like you maintain the diversity because the people are still in their in their natural habitats, let's say, or where they come from, and they're pulling, you know, information from different locations and different environments. And I think it's quite sorry,
Yeah,
I digress,
yeah,
but
absolutely. I worked on a project where the the music director was in New York. I was writing, sitting in Mumbai. The clients were in Bangalore and Dubai, you know. So, and it all happened beautifully, you know. So,
Michael, which of the two questions is the one that you want to answer? The one in the Q&A or the one in the chat?
Well, I saw there are two, aren't they? Well, there's a question about the kind of duality of a younger generation wanting purpose-driven brands, but then going off and buying fast fashion. Well, that's a really interesting question. What I've noticed this year, we've been doing, I can't share it yet, but we've been doing a brand, weirdly, that looks like fast fashion. And when you dig a little bit, you realize that it's all sustainable. It's all made out of recycled plastic. And that then got me myself to research into plastic-free shoes and this, that, and the other. And it is amazing. I've also been looking at kind of sustainable denim and things like that. And that's opened up these whole new series of things for me that I didn't actually know existed before. So I can't be the only one who's doing that. I can't be the only one thinking, oh, actually, I want to buy more ethically. I want to think about where my jacket has come from and who made my jeans and things like that. And so I think that the more and more to the question from Astrid, I think, Astrid, more and more people are going to start asking questions about fast fashion and asking themselves, why am I buying this? You know, if it's been made for 20p somewhere and I'm buying it for, 15 quid, that isn't good. You know, there's, by definition, someone somewhere made this for very little money. So I'm hoping that the realization will come in, that the kind of the blinkers will come off, if you like. There was another question interesting about how you get what happens if your brand gets trolled. Now that's a really interesting question because.
But if you want to do a great TikTok video or Reels video, you can go and buy fast fashion. So don't worry too much about it, Astrid. Yeah, because otherwise you'll have to close everything. You won't be able to enjoy anything.
Said like a true ad man, yeah. Okay. The other question was about what happens if your brand gets trolled. I think that is really interesting. We actually got trolled really big time earlier in the year because I talked about a project that we did a while ago to Save the Children, the big charity, and where we'd taken their typeface and they didn't want to change their corporate typeface, and we had children redraw their typeface. So we kind of had, which was a really lovely idea. I mean, it's quite an old project now, but it was a really interesting way to take a very stiff corporate brand and make it feel very unstiff by getting children to redraw the typeface. The problem was that the original typeface was drawn by an English typographer called Eric Gill. Now, Eric Gill...
Oh, the famous one, yeah.
Yeah, he gathered this reputation for being a little bit dodgy. And this didn't come out way till after his death. And so I shared this interesting type story on Instagram, and then I started getting hugely trolled by people about why was Save the Children using a typeface designed by Eric Gill. Now, I had no control over this at all. I didn't choose Gill Sans. Someone else had chosen it. And I was just, this was just an interesting way to inflect this typeface, but just an unbelievable amount of shit and trolling because of something that I couldn't control. And in the end, I mean, this went on for days and days and days and days. I know this is just a micro example, but it was very interesting. In the end, I just had to ride it out, and I kept replying to people who'd left these kind of comments and saying, look, we didn't choose that, we did this. You're kind of, shoot at Save the Children, don't shoot at me. But it's really difficult to know. I think you have to be really open and really honest with people in terms of dealing with this. And if you have made a mistake, just put your hands up and say, okay, we've made a mistake. We're gonna change this. Be really honest about it. Sorry, I was just answering the questions.
And that Michael, that proves the point that brands brands won't be able to fake it anymore. As you were saying, that many brands will fake it because of this, because consumers are out there now asking questions. And as you are saying, immediately this whole surge of trolling happened. That's the power that is there with them now. So
Yeah.
It's not nice when you're on the other end of it, but yes, that's the power. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it wasn't nice at all, but I mean,
No,
it kind of did
absolutely.
teach me quite an
Absolutely.
interesting lesson there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is why I also liked Astrid's question, because at one point I was sitting there thinking, are there enough of us? Like these, because you were talking about millennials and how we're purpose driven and things like that. And I was just thinking that there's also this idea of, cost versus value. And we always talk about purpose driven, and people seem to forget to talk about cost versus value. And the fact that, there are a lot of really great sustainable brands out there, even in fashion, that, to be honest, I would love to buy, but they're incredibly expensive. It's almost like when organic, bio, this kind of eco food came out, and everybody was saying, yeah, but it's 3 times more expensive than the other stuff. It's like you want to buy it and you want to make the better choice, but it's infinitely harder to do that for a lot of people based on their level of economy. And so that's why I liked Astrid's question, is because I was sitting there thinking, are there enough of us that can really support this all the way to the end? Not just, yes, I believe in this, but also like I make the purchase decision to back it up.
What you could do is you could make the decision to buy it. Okay, it may be 3 times as expensive, but just wear it 3 times more.
True.
Yeah.
Very true.
So someone said to me that recently about buying clothes, which is a really interesting thing. If you see something that you want to buy, ask yourself, will I wear it 30 times?
Yeah, cost per use.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, is we always have to think about the cost versus the versus the value. That's for sure.
If you're not going to wear it 30 times, don't buy it, because that's just a waste. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that that we're at the kind of the front end of this way of thinking, but I think that more and more this way of thinking about is going to percolate down. I'm sure of it.
Yep, absolutely. And there is hope, because the more people demand this, technology and human beings and technology will find a solution to make those clothes cheaper.
Yeah, that's
sustainable things cheaper, as it's happening in every industry.
Yeah, automotive, things like that. Yeah.
At one point in time, electric vehicles were considered really, really costly.
Yeah.
But because that's the demand. So
they still are.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Of course they are. But Fisker is launching a cheaper version. So lots of them out there.
We have I think a good question from JP, and thanks JP for sending it in. I'm actually going to give your question the end of the stage here. His question is, what is the one mistake you see emerging in ad agencies, to Sonal, and designers, to Michael, that you see emerging ad agencies and designers making? And what is perhaps missing at the moment in both industries? So this is for emerging ad agencies and designers. What is the one mistake that you see them making, and what is missing in both industries? I don't know who wants to start.
Well, I don't know what's missing at the moment, if I'm honest, but I know what is a classic mistake that young design companies make, which is that they start off either marketing themselves as a cheap version of the company they used to work for, A, or B, they do work which is just like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And so they're immediately cheaper but the same, and they're also undifferentiated. Yeah. So these are 2 fundamental errors that young design companies make again and again and again. They start up because they want more control over their work, yet they start doing work, that's often the way, yet they end up doing work that could be like anyone else. And that has always astonished me, this. It happens all the time. And this is why, certainly talking from a London perspective, you get so many companies starting up and kind of blooming briefly and then just disappearing because they don't. And that's the other thing. The third thing they don't really think about is, if you're going to do this, think about the long game. Think about how you could keep doing this. What is different about your company that will stay different? Not you're the people using this type and this color and this illustrator. That's not differentiating. That's differentiating for about 3 months, not for 3 years or 13 years. And it's amazing how many design companies don't think about this.
Very nice.
That's a great answer, and exactly the same thing happens with, I think, emerging advertising agencies also, is that if sometimes there's the pressure of money, pressure of earning, but you used to constantly ask yourself, why did you start on your own? You have to constantly ask yourself that. Possibly set your mission, vision, values, and follow them. So that's one. The other thing that I've seen, and everything which Michael spoke about, which is that you start to do similar kind of work, but cheaper. So to keep away from that, keep questioning yourself, why did you start it in the first place? At least do 3-4 projects or 1 or 2 projects that actually show why you started the whole thing. And that might spur you to do more and more of that. So that's one. The second thing is, do not have the imposter syndrome, which an emerging agency might suffer from, which is, don't tell yourself that you're small, so you have to do this kind of work. Those people are big, you know. The fact that you took on the onus of starting on your own, right? And the fact that you're small, tell yourself that you're that much more agile, right? And you can fight the David, you know, in terms of David versus Goliath. Yeah. And so this, don't have the imposter syndrome that can affect smaller agencies, smaller design houses quite a lot as they struggle to kind of, you know, struggle in the beginning. So don't have that. Keep the confidence alive.
That's very nice, guys. We've run out of time. Unfortunately, we're over time actually, but I have to thank you guys. I knew that you guys that putting you two together was a good idea, just because you guys have such, I think, differing views. It's really refreshing, to be honest, to have these kinds of conversations. So I really appreciate it. And I thank you both for being here. And guys, for everybody watching, I have to say a really big thank you for being here with us today, and for the last month. I know there are some names that I see appearing quite regularly on the list of people watching. So I send you a big shout out as well. This is it. So this is our last live of 2020, and you know, happy December to everyone. Thank God we're here. And I guess stay tuned to see, you know, what we plan on doing next with Rebels and Rulers for 2021. I think it's going to be another interesting year, but to Sonal's point, you know, great things come in small packages sometimes.
So Michael and me have to have a beer together. So we are coming to 2021 also. Yeah?
Yes, we keep talking about how Rebels and Rulers 2021 should be like, you know, the great reunion to symbolize how everybody can be back together. We'll just bring all of the speakers back here to I don't know, to see everyone, because it's just been, you know, it's also been emotional for us to see all of you and not be able to really interact as much as we like. But
if we do come back, that very strange restaurant with the really weird food, I think we have to talk about that, you know.
That huge one, or which one?
really strange food. I mean, like, you know, I mean, I think I could eat 1 cabbage and half a carrot or something. So the table is full of meat as far as you can see, everywhere.
That's true. That's Eastern. That's Eastern.
Boiled, kind of sizzled, grilled meat. That's all I can.
But now it's much better. Yes. See, I'm vegetarian.
You have to, Michael. You have to come and eat some Indian vegetarian food.
So yes. I'm vegetarian, and now it's much better. I can promise you that. Now the options are way more than they were even a year ago.
Yay.
Anyways, we'll talk about that. So until then, guys, I don't know. I mean, Michael, Sonal, we'll definitely talk soon. And for anybody listening, if you need any of us, I mean, we're super open. As you can see, find us on LinkedIn, send us a message, and I think we'd be more than happy to keep in touch. So thank you again for everything, guys. I really appreciate it. And bye-bye. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Bye, Michael. Bye, Flavia. Take care.
Bye.